Hello everyone. I'm currently working on a multi-part series of a topic that I've been wanting to cover for a while now, but it's taking me a lot longer to edit than I thought it would. She's long, we'll just put it that way. And so I decided since it's taking so long, I'm going to be covering a few other cases in the meantime. And in today's case, we're going to be talking about the disappearance of Anna Walsh. 39-year-old Anna Walsh was a very beautiful and petite woman who was born and raised in Serbia. Anna is described as having an Eastern European accent and is also multilingual. Now, before moving to the US, Anna would frequently use summertime visas to go between Serbia and Washington, D.C., before she would eventually permanently move to the US in 2005. Now, around this time, Anna would work in the hospitality industry, being described as confident and ambitious. She'd eventually become a very competitive real estate executive in Boston and the Washington, D.C. areas. She lived in the Boston area, but would frequently travel to Washington, D.C. to do some work there, and while she was in Washington, D.C., she'd stay at a $1 million townhouse that she owned in the area. A former colleague of Anna named Pamela Barty would be quoted saying, "You know the kind of person that walks into the room and is big energy, driven, and smiling? That's Anna, a radiant spirit." Right before Anna's disappearance, I think it was about a year before her disappearance, she landed a high-ranking position with a real estate investment company called Tishman Speyer. Anna wasn't just a very radiant, smart person. She also had a very important job. She was very high-ranking in her position. She was very talented, educated, and a very social person. Family and friends would also describe Anna as a beacon of love and joy. So as I said, Anna lived in the Boston area, and it turns out she actually lived in a very affluent area of Massachusetts called Cohasset. There she lived with her 3 young children from the ages of 2, 4, and 6, as well as her husband, Brian Walsh. Anna and her 47-year-old husband, Brian, had wed in 2015. She was also described as being very into traveling, enjoying the life she had built for herself, posting many photos and inspirational quotes on her Instagram, and she just seemed to overall be a very lovely, brilliant person. Now, Brian, he was a co-founder and CFO of a company called LETS, but honestly, there's not much information on this company. It seems that it might be closed down. I'm not 100% sure on that. But Brian was also featured in the Boston Globe as a Boston-based international art dealer. Now, we'll get a little more into Brian and who he is, his past and his history a little later on, but let's get into the timeline right now. On Christmas Day of 2022, Anna would beg her mother Milanka over text to come and visit her. Milanka was quoted saying, and I quote, "She just said, 'Please, Mama, come tomorrow,' which means that clearly there must have been some problems," end quote. A few days later, on December 31st, on New Year's Eve, Anna would then attempt to contact her family in Serbia once again. She'd call both her mother, her sister, and her maid of honor, but they were all either sleeping or celebrating the New Year's, so none of them ended up answering her phone calls. On January 4th, Anna would fail to show up to work. And right off the bat, there is a lot of confusion on who exactly reported Anna missing first. Now, according to police logs, Anna's employer was the first one to report her missing after she didn't show up to work, so the head of security ended up calling the police requesting a wellness check on her. But according to Anna's husband Brian's story and his lawyers, Brian was the one to contact Anna's employers first, saying, and I quote, "I haven't heard from my wife." After Brian contacted her employers then suggested that their head of security call the police because he was a former police officer. So again, right off the bat, there's this whole confusion about who contacted law enforcement first. Either way, Anna would end up being reported missing.
Cohasset police are looking for a woman who's been missing since New Year's Day. 39-year-old Anna Walsh was last seen at her home shortly after midnight on January 1st.
Police would immediately launch an investigation into the mother of 3 because it was not like her to not show up to work. Again, she was very high-ranking. She was a very smart, brilliant, talented woman. There was no way she was going to just run off, skip a job that she was very committed to, that she was making a lot of money at, and leave her children behind. There was just no way. Now, when police would arrive and speak to Brian, he would reveal that he hadn't seen Anna since January 1st, which was 3 days prior. According to Brian, Anna had left their home on January 1st around 7 a.m. to catch a flight to Washington, D.C. for work. She'd allegedly used a rideshare program that was going to take her to Logan Airport. Now, according to police, Anna did in fact have a flight booked, but it was for January 3rd. But it's been reported that Anna had been called into DC early to handle some type of emergency. January 6th, Cohasset police held an early morning news conference asking the public for their help in locating the mother of 3.
Again, thank you for coming. We're looking for the public's help and the media's help in locating Anna Walsh, W-A-L-S-H-E. She's been missing since the first of the year, early morning hours of the first of the year, and we're seeking the public's help in locating her.
And in this news conference, Anna's case would be announced as a missing persons case. Police Chief William Quigley would end up telling reporters, and I quote, "It's not normal that she's missing, so we automatically feel that she's in danger by the mere fact that she's missing," end quote. But by this point in the investigation, there wasn't really anything to support any suspicious or criminal activity. But that would change very quickly. Just 2 days later, on January 8th, Brian Walsh would be arrested and charged with misleading police during an investigation. Brian would originally tell police that he had this 3-hour time frame allotted so that he could go pick up his mother from a surgery that she was having, but then it turns out she had recovered faster than expected, so she ended up driving herself home. So instead, he went and ran errands for her. He would then claim to have visited a Whole Foods and a CVS on that January 1st, and then on January 2nd, he claims to have taken one of his children to get ice cream. Now, despite Brian's story during his first court appearance, police would allege that Brian was nowhere to be seen on surveillance footage at either of those stores. He was, however, captured on Home Depot's surveillance footage, spending $450 on cleaning supplies, including mops, buckets, tarps, tape. In this footage, Brian also is said to be wearing a surgical mask and gloves, and he bought everything in cash, which none of that is ever good and is a huge red flag in my opinion. It would also turn out that Brian was on house arrest during this time, which we'll talk about in a moment why he was on house arrest, but he was said to have driven to Brockton and Abington, which were 2 areas that he was not allowed to go to. They were outside of his localized area where he was allowed to be because of his house arrest. Police would also determine that there were no rideshare services used on January 1st. Now, despite all of this evidence, Brian is currently pleading not guilty in the disappearance of his wife. Meanwhile, in all of this mess, their children were placed in Brian's mother's care, and then they were taken away from Brian's mother and placed in the care of the state. Prosecutor Lynn Beelan would be quoted saying, and I quote, "These various statements caused a delay in the investigation to the point that during the time frame when he didn't report his wife and gave various statements that allowed him time to either clean up the evidence, dispose of evidence, and cause a delay. The intentional, willful, and direct response to question about his whereabouts on the day of Sunday, January 1st, 2023, and Monday, January 2nd, 2023, were a clear attempt to mislead and delay investigators. The fact that he was asked a specific question and he gave an untruthful answer that led investigators out of the area caused a clear delay in the search for the missing person, Anna Walsh," unquote. And it would slowly come out that Brian Walsh, in fact, wasn't the family man that he all wanted everyone to think he was. In 2021, Brian would plead guilty to selling 2 fake Andy Warhol paintings to a buyer in Los Angeles for $80,000. And this sale happened in 2016. He was eventually convicted of wire fraud. The affidavit reads that Walsh took art from a friend, falsely offered the authentic Warhol paintings for sale on eBay, then delivered fake paintings to the buyer. As part of Brian's pre-sentencing probation, he was then ordered on house arrest and monitoring, which is why when Anna disappeared, he was on house arrest still. On top of that, in 2019, court documents showed that Brian was accused of stealing nearly $1 million of his father's savings, which forced his father to work past retirement. Now, it seems this happened and then his father passed away. I'm not really sure on the timeline. Let me know down below if you know more information on this timeline. But eventually, it seems that his father passed away and Brian was left out of the will, and he was very upset about being left out of the will. There was eventually this affidavit that would come out where in this affidavit, he is accused of being an untrustworthy person, of fabricating reality to suit his needs, of being a physically violent person, as well as a sociopath. Now, of course, that's kind of hearsay. It's alleged. It's other people saying this about him. But the fact that the people in his life, including his own family he was stealing from allegedly, are saying these kind of things about him. Meanwhile, Anna's family is describing her as such a beautiful soul. But can someone jump from theft to murder? Police would eventually obtain a search warrant and begin to search the Walsh home. And there was a lot of evidence recovered inside of the home. There was blood as well as a bloody damaged knife that was found in the basement of the home. What I think is even creepier is that police would discover in Brian's internet search history searches for things such as how to dispose of a 115-pound woman's body, and we know that Anna is around 115 pounds, as well as a search for how to dismember a body.
At 3 p.m. he did some errands and went to his mother's house in Swampscott, but got lost because he didn't have his phone. He said he knew he was lost when he saw the pirate ship on Route 1. Defendant stayed 15 minutes, then went to Whole Foods and CVS. Surveillance was checked and he did not enter either of those stores. On January 1st, defendant Googled using his son's iPad. Some of his searches are as follows. Keep in mind that the defendant said he left at 6 a.m. At 4:55 a.m. on January 1st, he searched how long before a body starts to smell. At 4:58 a.m., how to stop a body from decomposing. At 5:20 a.m., he searched how to mount a body. At 5:47 a.m., 10 ways to dispose of a dead body if you really need to. At 6:25 a.m. on the 1st, how long for someone to be missing to inherit. At 6:34 a.m. on the 1st, can you throw away body parts? At 9:29 a.m., what does formaldehyde do? At 9:34 a.m. on the 1st, how long does DNA last? At 9:59 a.m., can identification be made on partial remains? At 11:34 a.m., dismemberment and the best ways to dispose of a body. At 11:44, how to clean blood from wooden floor. At 11:56 on the 1st, luminol to detect blood. At 1:08, what happens when you put body parts in ammonia? At 1:21 p.m., is it better to throw crime scene clothes away or wash them? Those were on the January 1st. There was also information gained from the defendant's phone, which showed on January 2nd, he was at Home Goods in Norwell, where he purchased 3 rugs.
It was also determined that Anna's cell phone pinged overnight on both January 1st and the 2nd at her home. Now, how would that be possible if she allegedly left to go to Washington, D.C. on the 1st? It wouldn't. Her phone was then turned off around January 4th, so things in the case were not looking good at this point. Especially since someone who was so active and so social hadn't posted a single photo online, hadn't contacted any of their friends and family, hadn't shown up to work, and she again was a very reliable worker. No one had heard from her, no one had seen her after December 31st.
Of support in Cohasset tonight as a vigil was held here in honor of Anna Walsh, the mother of 3 who vanished nearly 2 weeks ago. And while police continue investigating her disappearance, concern is growing among her neighbors and loved ones.
A 2-day search would then commence, which involved 20 state troopers from a specialized search and rescue unit, 3 canine teams, the state police air wing, and police divers. Investigators would also begin to dig through a landfill in Peabody, which is a town about an hour's north of Anna's home. In this landfill, multiple items would then be recovered, including a hatchet, a hacksaw, a blood-soaked rug, and garbage bags with blood, and all of these were thought to be connected to Anna's disappearance. Crime scene tape would also be put around dumpsters located at an apartment complex near the home of Brian Walsh's mother. And this was in the town of Swampscott, which is about 15 miles north of Boston. Investigators would also search the wooded areas surrounding the Walsh home. Now, things might have been found during the search of these dumpsters as well as the area around her home, but there hasn't really been much talked about at that. On January 10th, 2 friends of Anna named Mike and Mandy Silva would do an interview with Washington 4. Now, it seems that Mike and Mandy Silva actually lived in a property or rented a property from the Walshes.
Brian was very professional. He had me thinking he was an investor. He was always looking at the stock market.
A contractor, Mike poured thousands of his own money into this unit in Revere. He and his fiancée Mandy had been promised by the Walshes they could buy. But it all changed with a heated conversation December 29th, when the couple realized the unit had been sold for cash to other buyers, and they said Anna's demeanor changed.
It was out of character for the way that Anna was acting. She was being very protective. She was, targeting us personally and saying, she should have done a background check on us. She should have checked our credit.
Mike Silva says the Walshes owned a number of properties he helped with, like this one in Lynn, but was told they were recently selling off assets, which he thought was strange.
And according to these friends, Anna was in a rush to sell the car as well as this home or apartment that they lived in, and she was in a rush to sell these assets just within a few days before her disappearance. Mandy was quoted saying, and I quote, "Over time within the last 6 months, things started to get really strange with the Walshes. Anna was selling all of her assets in the Boston area, including our unit." Mike would also confirm it was very out of character, saying, and I quote, "They never stayed at a property for more than a year, so I figured maybe they're running from something or hiding from something. I mean, she sold all of her property and walked away with a lot of money." End quote.
I'm totally shocked. I'm like, things that didn't add up was just starting to add up.
He had texted the couple wishing them a happy new year, and finally got this answer from Brian in a text 2 days later on January 2nd.
Saying, "Happy New Year. Sorry for the delay. I misplaced my phone and my son just found it."
No mention of Anna, who was reported missing the next day.
It would also come out that Brian and Anna's marriage wasn't as happy as it seemed. Before the couple was married, Anna had filed a police report with the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department on August 2nd of 2014. In this complaint, Anna stated that an unnamed suspect made a statement over the telephone that he was going to kill her. Metro DC police would later confirm that this unnamed suspect was in fact Brian Walsh. With all of this circumstantial evidence, on January 17th, so just as of yesterday as I'm filming this video, Brian Walsh has been officially charged with murder in the disappearance of his wife. On top of that, he's also being charged with improper transfer of a body. And then we get this very disgusting video of Brian that, in my opinion, he's looking very smug. He's smiling ear to ear as he walks out in cuffs, and it's gross. It's very punchable, you know? But let me know how you feel about this smile on his face. But as of now, Anna has still not been found. And with the evidence that they've released so far and these charges that they're putting out, it's seeming more and more likely that Anna, unfortunately, is no longer with us. And that breaks my heart for these 3 innocent children who no longer have a mother but also have a father in prison. And we've seen this story way too many times. This case just feels like a repeat of the Maya Miliete case. Maya's disappearance was one of the first cases I ever covered on my channel, and if you do want to watch my footage, I'll have it linked down below, or just go search, on my page and you'll find it. I've covered her case pretty extensively, from her disappearance to her husband also being arrested, and he is now, I think, going to trial for her disappearance and her murder. As of me filming this video, Maya still hasn't been found either, and she also has multiple children that are left without a mother or a father. But how do you all feel about this case? Because I am sick of telling this story over and over and over again. The same story of a husband being arrested for the disappearance and murder of his wife. And I just don't understand why people think murder is a better choice than just getting a divorce. As for Anna's case, the judge currently has Brian's murder warrant as well as court documents sealed, so this is all we kind of know at the moment regarding why they arrested him, what information they have, what evidence they have, but I'm sure it eventually will come out, and when it does, I will of course keep you all updated. And if you do want to stay updated with Anna's case as well as all of the other cases that I do cover, I recommend hitting that subscribe button and turning on the notification bell, because not only will it notify you when I do post updates, but it will also allow me to continue to spend more time creating videos like this and spend more time spreading the word about these cases. With that, I hope you all stay safe out there. Make sure to lock your windows and your doors. If there are any other cases that you want me to cover right now, let me know down below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.